Hey, welcome to the Insurance Buzz. This is your host, Michael Weaver and Courtney Weaver. We have a special guest with us today, Mr. Richard Salinas. Richard, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I guess that goes
Abs-
without saying, right?
We're excited. We were looking at your resume beforehand and we're going to dive into that. But I know Michael has a quick question before we get there.
yeah, so I want to know, who was Richard before insurance?
Oh, that's really easy. So I have to give you a little background. I'm 52 years old, and I started with farmers when I was 22. So there's not much before farmers. I know this much. I was a junior in college. I was at UTA in Arlington, and there was a particular person that I graduated with, and her mother was an insurance agent with farmers. And I happened to pass by on the way home from college, and her husband was putting a new sign on a new location. And so I knew both of them, the parents, and I pulled over and I thought, just talk to them, just talk to them. And I pulled over and I asked Ralph, that was the gentleman that was the husband. I said, look, can I speak to Angela for a moment? And Angela was the agent. And he said, sure, it's good to see you. Said hi to each other. He said, go on in. And I went in. Her at the time, secretaries sat me down and said, look, she'll be with you in a moment. She came out. I'll never forget it. She brought me into the office. She goes, what's going on? She hugged me, said it was good to see me. I asked her about her daughter. And I said, look, I hope I'm not being just really forward. I said, but the truth is, I'm interested in doing what you do. And she said, you want to be an insurance agent? I said, yeah, I really think I can. And I just want to know if you think I can. And she said, sit down. And we talked. About 30 minutes in, she said, look, I'm gonna set you up with my district manager. I think you're a good fit. I really do. And so she did. I spoke to her district manager, still friends with that person. She's a farmer's agent in Tyler, and her name's Letitia Stanley. And Letitia said, all of it was going great. Everything was, I didn't have two dimes to rub together. I was bartending, going to college and working part-time. And I do recall, we got to a point where she said, look, I need a copy of your diploma. And that's the way Farmers was hiring at the time, 30 years ago. And I said, look, I'm a senior. I'm just starting my senior year. She said, you didn't tell me that. I said, I apologize. I should have started with that. She said, listen, why don't you let me know once you graduate? She goes, I figure you'll change your mind about 10 times between now and then. And maybe we'll look at it then. She said, but I'm just a little disappointed. I said, I'm sorry. So I remember getting about 3 weeks from graduation, maybe 4 weeks from graduation. And I called her from my parents' home where I was living. And I said, hey, do you remember interviewing me? Do you remember speaking to me? And she said, yeah, I do, She said, have you graduated? I said, I'm about to in about 3 weeks. And she goes, I really didn't think you'd call me. And I said, I told you I was serious. I told you I was interested. And I was. And I'll never forget this. And she doesn't forget it either because she joins these webinars when I speak sometimes. I said, Tish, do you remember telling me, that you would be responsible for a portion of what I would cost to onboard? And she said, I do. I said, do you remember telling me to not let you down and not waste your time? And she goes, I do remember you saying that. I said, can you tell everybody what I said? She said, you said, I promise I won't ever let you down. And I haven't done that in 30 years. So that was the person that gave me a break and a chance. And that's how it happened. And before that, just a college student that was trying to make a break, trying to make a difference.
Yeah. So, and that's that's a hell of a story, and I love that. So I got to ask though, what intrigued you to go into insurance? What made you actually reach out to your friend's parents and be like, I want to be like you?
That was easy. Angela asked the same thing. My father has a fourth grade education, and my mother has a 10th grade education. She's a high school dropout. Um, and my dad's an immigrant, and my mother was born here in Dallas. But um, I've been asked that, what is it? And it's very easy for me to come up with the exact answer. I played basketball, I played football, I was involved in sports and extracurricular activities. And sometimes those things would happen at 3 and 4 in the afternoon. Sometimes those things would happen at 5 and 6 in the afternoon. And my parents rarely were able to make anything because of the type of jobs they had, and going in at 6:30 in the morning and getting home at 6:30 in the afternoon, and living paycheck to paycheck. And I remember looking around at the fathers that were there and at the parents that were there. And most of those parents were in financial positions. They were either in banking, or they were in insurance, or they were insurance executives of some sort. And they had freedom along with wealth. And so early on, I thought to myself, if I have the chance to do that, I'm going to do that and make up for what my parents couldn't do. So for me, it was really easy to tell Angela, I want to do what you do. I want the freedom you have. I want the financial freedom you have and the unlimited income you have. I've seen it. I saw it when I was a child. I know what it did. I know what it made me feel. And I know what it felt like for my parents not to be able to be there. And so that was the easy part. That part of it is the reason why. And that's it's as fundamental as that. It's as basic as that.
I love that.
So, are you the first person in your family to have a high school or college education?
I was the first person in my family to graduate college. My mother and father said, we feel bad that you left to college and we didn't even know what a credit hour was. We didn't even know what registration was, or rushing a fraternity, or any of those things that you did. And I'm one of three kids. My older brother is my mother's and not my father's. My father was his stepfather. And my mother had him when she was 16 out of wedlock. And then I was my father and my mother's first. And then I have a younger brother named Paul, who's about 3 years younger. My older brother died of a drug overdose in Venice, California, about 12 years ago. And my younger brother is a neurosurgeon in Frisco, Texas, with a spine fellowship. So I know both ends of the spectrum. That part of it, I guess I was able to do that first, and to set that. I say this about Paul, and it's in nothing more than being jealous of him. Paul had a map on exactly what not to do and exactly what to do, and he used it, and he maximized it, and I couldn't be more proud of him, for sure. But I also don't deny the fact that he was able to see exactly how to do it and what to do and what not to do. I still consult him, even when he took the offer and came from Orange County to Frisco, Texas. I was a part of that offer. I was a part of that decision. And I thought to myself, I have no right to be doing this. I have no right to be asked my opinion. But I think he felt like I would be as honest and just as candid as I could. And so I say this, and I think you should know this about being the first to do some things. I put him on a lot of planes, and I put him on a lot of trains, and I put him inside of a lot of cars, and I walked him off the edge a lot of times, where the phone call on Thanksgiving night or the day after Christmas or Christmas morning would be, hey, is mom there? How are you? How's everybody doing? Should I come home? Am I making the right decision here? Am I wasting my time? And I would just continually downplay everything that was happening at home and tell him, look, you're not missing anything. Nobody's here. It's no big deal. You just keep doing what you're doing, And he didn't finish his education until he was 35. I tell a story about the cost of waiting, and the or the benefit of waiting, I should say. I had a good friend of mine that graduated high school and was a prodigy when it came to electronics and automobile electronics and mechanicking. And his name is Dan. And Dan was offered $65,000 when we got out of college in 1993 and got out of high school in 88. And Dan took it and didn't go to college and went straight to working for a large Cadillac dealership. And they put him right up the ranks. And Dan ended up probably making about $160,000 with them and managing their service department. and ultimately giving that up and becoming a firefighter and just saying that he couldn't put up with it anymore. Being responsible for people's happiness with their cars and everything. I use that story though to say that Dan started out at 65,000, ended up at maybe 160,000, and he took the soonest deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's myself that I went to college. I didn't get a master's degree. I came straight out of college. I started in insurance, and I don't know, revenue maybe $2 million a year, right? And then there's my brother, who stayed in school and didn't finish until he was 35 years old. Drove an absolute clunker most of that time. Rented, hand-me-down clothes, you name it. But I say, when we were negotiating that contract, you're talking about staying in Orange County or coming to Frisco, Texas, with a base contract of about $3.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people, look, that is the benefit of waiting. You take the immediate deal, you take the intermediate deal, or you do what other people aren't willing to do. And either way, the payoff matches the risk, the payoff matches the pain. And so, yeah, I was the first, but there was somebody after me that did it a lot better than I did, I think.
I think that's incredible, because when you don't have that example of what success looks like, or that blueprint, for you to have that vision, and I know we briefly chatted a little bit before, but hearing legacy and hearing you speak about legacy, and you're a top life insurance producing agent, and you're also so committed to the growth of your people, and you were talking about legacy. So it's all making sense on you giving back to people, because you had to have that for yourself. You had to literally fight for what your life looks like right now. So I think that that's incredible that you're in this. Insurance is such a service-based industry when it comes to the people and then the products that we sell. So I would like to know a little bit about what that looks like, the dynamic of growth and legacy looks like in your office, and how you set your people up for success. How do you give them the roadmap? What does that look like for your team?
That's an easy conversation to have. I'll say this: we should start out by talking about how many things we did wrong. So I've been an agent for 30 years. I feel like I did it wrong for probably a good 17. I say that to agents because I think they're really hard on themselves. I see agents now that are 3 years in, 5 years in, and they're trying to decide whether they want to stay in it. Or am I a failure? Am I doing things right? Am I doing things wrong? And I tell them, you're getting way ahead of yourself. I was 17 years in of doing things the wrong way. Now, you're going to say, what do you mean doing things the wrong way? I didn't hire my first hire until I was an agent for 5 years. I had built it up to about 1,600 policies in force. Susan practically hired herself. She's still here now. She's my office manager, my in-house ABC. I hired with the mentality of, I don't need help. We're going to do this my way. A lot of bravado, a lot of ego, a lot of just a bad character. Not anything malicious, not anything criminal, but just not in the right place. I think you need that type of arrogance to start your business, to be an entrepreneur, and to take that chance. But I think you make a mistake when you don't drop that bravado, right?
Yeah.
When you don't shed that skin. So in the beginning, I think I needed that, and I was that. That's a big mistake. I was creating these barriers of keeping people away. And it was more of, well, if you want to come along and work for me, you could certainly watch how I do it and support me and be a cheerleader. And either way, this is how it's going to go. This is where we're going. This is where it's leading. And I'm going to be successful with or without you. It's a real bad perspective. The other thing I was doing, especially when it came to hiring, I was hiring after I needed someone. I wasn't hiring a plus one before I needed them. I was hiring them after we were bulging at the seams. So the hiring process was usually stimulated by Susan telling me, if you don't hire someone, I'm leaving in a week. Or if you don't hire a third person, Roxana's leaving in 3 weeks, And it was that pressure, that force that I had to stop what I was doing and stop being an agent, stop producing the personal line, stop producing the renters and the auto and the changes, and actually interview and hire and vet and, pre-qualify someone. And I was this hamster in a wheel, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of agents are there. I think a lot of them are that, especially when they have 1, 2, or 3 employees. If you ask them what all different hats they wear a lot of different hats. Just ask them, do you have a payroll service? No. Do you have a personal CPA? No. Do you have a personal attorney? No. Well, who handles your lease agreement? Who handles your quarterly payroll taxes? Who is it that vets your hiring potentials? Do you use Team Hired, Ideal Traits? Who do you, they don't use anything. They're all those hats, right? And that was a similar mistake that I made in the beginning. I can tell you why they make that mistake, though. And I know why I made that mistake. There's really 2 reasons, twofold. First, it's ego, that you think you can do it better than everybody else. Second, it's greed, that you think the less I pay out, the more I take home. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I did that for years. So my hiring process was you forcing me to do it, and then me interviewing someone who I felt was cool, interviewing someone I thought I was cool, and interviewing someone who could talk a really good game for the lowest price. And if you think about it, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
You sit there and you beat your head on a brick wall and wonder why you keep getting the same result. It wasn't until, and it's through the evolution of things where naturally I would tell Susan, well, why don't you interview Michael? He's in your office. I already interviewed him the first time. He's got an interview with you at 3:00 today. And Susan came into me in my office and would say, well, I don't even know what I'm hiring him for. I'd say, Susan, what do you mean? You're the one that told me to hire you. You said we're bulging at the seams. We can't keep up. She said, Richard, what are his hours? What are the expectations? What is his commission? What is his compensation? What are his hours of operation? What are we expecting him to accomplish? What do his long-term goals look like? I said, Susan, I think you mean a career description. Whatever you want to call it, Richard, whatever you want to call it. And I would stop and develop a career description, right? Or she'd come back to me and say, what kind of business are we operating here? Where is the employee manual? I'd say, what do you mean? An employee handbook? Yeah, an employee handbook. I'd say, Susan, I've never had enough time to stop and actually do that. I said, well, why don't you do that before we try to hire someone? Yeah. I don't have anything to hand them. They don't have anything to read. They don't have any expectations. I don't have anything that I'm supposed to be interviewing for, right? And so I would stop and develop some of these systems where I would then say, okay, now I have an employee handbook. Now I have a career description. Now I have a compensation model. But it was only after being forced to do so, right? So I was still hiring them in the wrong way. And Susan would come to me and say something that would bother me. And again, you guys know about my parents, so you'll understand why. I can remember, and I'll preface this by saying this, I can remember a summer with my mom coming home and her crying and me saying, hey, what's wrong? And we were off for summer break. And I was taking care of my older brother and my younger brother. And they were probably taking care of me too, but we were taking care of each other. And my mom saying, I have to talk to the 3 of y'all. We have new management at the plant and they have a 0 tolerance right now. Y'all can't call me at work and you can't come see me at work. And I thought, well, that's prison. You're not at work, you're in prison, right? And so I fast forward to say, Susan would come to me and go, hey, this bad choice that you made for an employee, which she wouldn't say that, but that's really what would happen. She would say, this bad choice you made for an employee, you can't be this person's friend and their disciplinarian. You can't be their friend and their boss. And I would look at her and go, I can't be anything but that. And I didn't tell her this. I've told her this since then, but I wanted to tell her I can't be what my parents' bosses were. I can't be that. I have to be the complete opposite of that. And so I would just fight it. And she later came out with a caveat for that. And we learned how to hire this way. She and I both came to this conclusion. You can't be their friend and their disciplinarian. You can't be their boss and their confidant unless they're a giver. That's the caveat. I was surrounding myself with takers, and all I needed to do was change that to givers. And then I could be everything I wanted to be. Now, since then, my district manager has coined the phrase go giver. A giver that's a go getter. That even makes it better, right? But I've had agents ask me, how do you know when the person's a giver? How do I know when I'm staring at a giver or interviewing a giver? I said, that's easy. A giver wants to be appreciated, compensated, respected, right? Praised, awarded. And a taker just wants to be compensated. It's really simple. I said, so I changed the way we were vetting people. I changed the way we were hiring people. I also changed a small aspect of what we were doing. Susan, with a taker, would say, when Michael leaves here, whatever Michael does after 5:30 is his business. Whatever Michael does on Saturday night is his business and not yours. And I would constantly be drug into Michael's personal life. And I finally realized that I would tell her, Susan, that's only with a taker. But with a giver, we have to develop his life outside of this office, because if his life outside of this office is in turmoil, then his life inside this office is in turmoil as well. So we began to the idea or the concept of developing people as opposed to training or hiring people. And so we started going, what if we hire Michael and we see ambition in him? We see drive in him. Maybe he's a victim of circumstance. Maybe his finances are upside down. Maybe he made some bad decisions with regards to a car that he bought or a motorcycle that he purchased. But let's help him get his nose above water with the promise that he'll never go down below water again, and explain to him that him being a minority or him being someone that doesn't come from a means, that we were going to help him get his nose above water, that's probably something no one would have ever done in his life. But once we do that for him, that we are asking him to live up to his full potential, that we are going to pour ourselves into him, our knowledge, our expertise, our patience, our time, and we're going to develop him with the fundamental thought that if Michael learns more and he does more, then he earns more. Okay? If he contributes more, he learns more and develops more, then I owe him more. And we do our best not to violate that every day. And so the whole way of hiring, the whole thought process in hiring changed. And once I learned that, then the prospects started getting better. Their tenure started to stick. And now, fast forward, Susan's been with me 25 years. Judy's been with me 10. Jesus has been with me 10. Chris has been with me 9. Jessica's been with me 6. Christian's been with me 9. And Miss Samantha's been with me 2. Sadie's been with me 1. Crystal's been with me 2. Joanna's been with me 1. And so we started having a little bit of stickiness to their longevity. What I also noticed in that process is I was no longer hiring the coolest person in the room or the person that thought I was cool. There's a commonality in all of them. Here's what it is, and they hate it when I say this, but it's the truth. And it's true about me too. They're a little geeky. They're a little nerdy. They're certainly driven. They're certainly ambitious. They're a little techie too, right? And none of them are the coolest person in the room. And they'll all argue that, but that's the truth. And I tell them, y'all are that for a reason, and you're that by design. And we can build on that. And so then once you have that, you start saying, okay, I'm going to show you some compensation that's dynamic and changing and doesn't have a ceiling. And I'm going to grow you and nurture you like I would a tree, right? And instead of you being a poplar tree that grows extremely fast overnight, but snaps in a windstorm very easily, I want to grow you as a cedar. I want you to grow slow, but you'll be able to withstand some really turbulent times.
Yep.
And you'll be able to harbor some things that will serve you even in my absence. When I'm not here anymore, you'll take that information and you'll leverage it, and you'll leverage it for the highest price. And usually we hire them with no experience, preferably, doesn't have to be, but preferably.
Yeah.
Ambitious. And I can say this about everyone here at our agency. There's 10 employees. I don't believe in part-time. So they're all full-time. They're all licensed in life and health and property and casualty. They're all background checked. They're all fingerprinted. They're all appointed by farmers. They all have their formal sign-in. 7 of them are notary publics. They're all commissioned. They're all salaried, and they're all paid monthly like an agent. And so here we are emulating a miniature district office.
Yep.
Farmers has district offices. We're running an agency where the agent, the control freak, the guy that had to control everything, okay, had to run everything. And Susan says this, and I want to share this with you because I think it's important. I can remember telling her and saying to her, say it the way I say it. Don't change the words. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I've already invented it. I was that big of an ass, right? And you have to learn how to stop keeping people out. And people have asked me, well, when did that happen? When does that happen? It happened for me just naturally saying, what if I tried it a different way? If my way got me here, what if I tried it her way and it gets me here?
Yeah.
Worst case, it gets me here and I go back to doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Worst case. But let's see what happens. And so I started doing things like, instead of saying no to her, saying absolutely. And now I try to practice that here at the agency every chance I get. If you're one of my team members, one of my 10 team members, and you come to me and go, boss, I found this cool monitor that I really like that Dell makes, and I just didn't want to tell you about it because I think it's expensive. I will pull out my wallet and say, here's my American Express. Order that today. If you think it makes you better, if you think it will make you more efficient, if it gives you any amount of confidence, I'm 100% in. And it's just, the truth is, it's me doing the opposite of what I used to do.
Yeah.
Instead of asking you, why do you need that? We don't need to spend that money. I could do some other things with that money. That's super expensive. That's what I used to do. And I absolutely don't want to do that anymore. It's more about, let's not cut corners, especially not on people. And let me pour everything I can into you if that's what you think will make you better.